Something I forgot to mention about the Real Knuckles mod is that it's kind of ironically named because you still can't climb with him, which is one of his other signature abilities besides being able to glide. So that's kind of disappointing. Like, I don't see why that was so hard to program, and yet flying and gliding, nah, those are easy. But it's not really that big of a deal, it's very easy to forget. And because I can't take this seriously, as cool as it looks, because Classic Sonic has such a dopey smile. He looks so out of character here. I mean, Metal Sonic is being badass and cool, but I really like how he held his head in pain there. Because it implies that he's actually more human than you think, because he wouldn't have put his hand on his head if he couldn't feel pain. You know? So I like that. Metal Sonic is more of a character in this game than Classic Sonic is. Classic Sonic might as well be Mario for all the personality he shows. And I shouldn't have to point out how bad that is, considering that this is a series that was born against rebelling against Mario. But yeah, this is a pretty easy boss fight. It's got dynamic camera angles and stuff to make it look cool, so it's mostly about the spectacle. I love the theme that plays here, although it still has the annoying man at the start of it, just like in Sonic CD. Honestly, I think that Sonic 4 Episode 2's remix of this is a lot better, because it doesn't have that. But yeah, this is eons better than the Sonic CD boss fight. You don't have spikes constantly annoyingly littering the arena. You don't have to jump over them constantly. You don't have slopes that are to the detriment of your speed, because you stop at them. You don't have to constantly... Like, it's easy. You just dodge his attacks and jump into him. And that causes him to explode. Even though he's still alive and well in the hub world, and you can still rematch him. By the way, when you talk to Metal Sonic to start the boss fight, he talks to you. So anyone saying that Metal Sonic only talked in Sonic Heroes, that theory's out the window. It is necessary? Wow, you can tell that this is the youngest version of Metal Sonic. I mean, really? I will battle you as many times as it is necessary. I'm pretty sure that's a grammar fail. You can tell that he's new to speaking. Not really that big of a deal though, but just kind of amusing. You wouldn't expect him to make that mistake. But yeah, he's in his youngest form, and he has no problem with talking. Classic Metal Sonic could talk just fine. So I don't know why people are like, oh, Metal Sonic could only talk as Neo Metal Sonic in Sonic Heroes. It is really cool that you can use a mod to play as him though. And this is the perfect example of how they can actually make treasure hunting good. Where do I even begin with how much they improved on it? First off, you have an arrow pointing in the direction that you should go. So you always know exactly where you should go. I mean, you don't know exactly where to press Y, because the indicators on the floor disappear as you go up to them. But honestly, that's a nitpick, because of just how much they've streamlined it. I mean, there's 35 medals for you to dig up. I think it would have been more in character for Knuckles to be digging up Master Emerald shards myself. I mean, this is a game about time and space distortion, so it wouldn't really be that much of a stretch to say that Master Emerald was shattered again. But yeah, like, there's 35 medals, but there's more than 35 in the stage. So it's not like you have to get all of them, which is good because there's a time limit. Although I say that, but the time limits in the Generations missions are all very lenient. It's only the last 3 zones that have missions that are hard. Like, it's shocking just how good all the missions in the game are. Very few of them are annoying. It's so much better than Rush Adventure, where a lot of the missions were ruined by strict time limits. But yeah, this is how you do treasure hunting right. If they ever make treasure hunting return, which they won't because whining haters and critics who never liked Sonic will constantly complain at them if they do. But if they do make treasure hunting return finally, this is how they should do it. Because this is how you do it right. You have more than 35 medals, so it's not like you have to collect all of them. They're not hard to find at all. It's not like you need to rely on hit monitors or Tikal fairies that fly through walls in order to find them. No, you just naturally run into them because it's a linear level. It's not like you're exploring the entire level and it's all wide open and huge. The default music for this mission is actually the really boring Sonic 3D Blast Saturn title screen music or something. It's a really repetitive song that just loops the same two notes over and over again. There's a reason that I think I do show off the default mission music eventually, but for the most part, when I play missions, I use that as an opportunity to show off the unlockable songs you can play. And I also use it to show off the character mods, obviously. Like, a lot of people complained about the fact that you can't play as other characters in Generations. Like, even the regular fans out there who aren't, like, huge on making a good story and stuff, like, even they were disappointed that, why is there an invisible wall? That's so stupid. But anyways, like people were disappointed that you couldn't play as Tails and Knuckles in this game. You have models of Tails, like, flying you and stuff. And, like, you'd think that you'd be able to play as classic Tails and Knuckles in the classic levels at the very least, but no. And you have a playable, like, you have a model of Shadow boosting. So, yeah, I don't think that section is very well designed because it basically forces you to blindly homing attack in the dark and hope that you manage to get to the goal ring. That is the worst possible camera angle for that. I don't really understand how you're able to, like, I don't know. I also think that they should give you the boss key, like, automatically when you beat the first mission in the zone. I'm not going to be showing off all of the missions in the main playthrough. I'm going to be showing them all off, but the rest of the missions are going to be in the extra parts. Like, I'm there, but you'll see that later. There's also a Casino Night DLC thing. I'm also going to show that off in the extra part because it's an extra thing. It's basically just a lame pinball table. And I think, like, I'm really glad that I didn't buy it because eventually they actually gave it to PC owners for free. So that was cool. So I never even had to buy it at all. A cool thing that this game does is that depending on which Sonic that you were last, that's going to affect which perspective that you see from. Like, which Sonic you see first. So, like, there's sound, like, there's voice clips here, but if you're classic Sonic when you enter this cutscene, then there will be no sound at all. Like, it's just so weird how classic Sonic never even talks when he talked every time that he could talk in the classic era. Like, he laughs at one point, but no sound comes out of his mouth. He just silently laughs. They were going to get Jaleel White to voice him. Jaleel White was never even really contacted, but I guess they were considering it. Like, they couldn't imagine him with any other voice, because that was the voice that they used for him in the Sonic cartoons. Like, I don't really think he's a good voice for Sonic, because he makes him sound like a stereotypical bratty little kid. It's just like Roger Craig Smith making Sonic sound like a whiny teenager, rather than the adventurous thrill seeker who has a lot of charm. But still, I mean, like, it's the voice for classic Sonic. Like, I think they should have just gotten that, rather than awkwardly making him not speak, even though, let me think of all the times that Sonic spoke. Sad AM, Sonic Underground, the comics, Sega Sonic the Hedgehog, Sonic CD. He also spoke in another, I think it was Wacka Wacka Patrol Car, an arcade game, and Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, and the Sonic OVA. But oh yeah, classic Sonic never talked. He basically spoke every single time that he could. So making him mute is only appealing to the fanboys that aren't really fans of Sonic to begin with, because they just played a few zones of each Genesis Sonic game at a friend's house, and that was it. This boss can be pretty annoying. Also, not really sure why it returned when we just fought it in Sonic 4 Episode 1. But, like, he can crush you and kill you if a shockwave hits you, which I showed off. Like, I like the music that plays, it's pretty epic. It can be kind of unintuitive trying to figure out how you're supposed to beat him. Because basically what you need to do is he creates a targeting reticule, and you need to make it so that he fires at the bombs. The problem is that it's not entirely intuitive that you're expected to do that. And see that arrow there in the background? That's telling you that you should be jumping onto him so that you automatically run across his arm and jump into him awesomely. The problem with this is you don't want to get close to the boss because their explosions hurt you. There are actually some differences between the console and PC versions of the game aside from the modding potential. The PC version has more shadows and the colors are slightly less vibrant. The maximum frame rate for the PC version is 60 frames per second, while it's locked to 30 frames per second on consoles. And the loading times are also greatly reduced. Unfortunately, it lacks the Sega Genesis controller letting you play Sonic 1, but that can be added back with a mod, so whatever. The ring physics from Sonic Colors are back, which sucks because they were one of the biggest problems with that game. Like, I just hated how when you have Mercy Invincibility, it doesn't really count because it's not merciful if the rings completely ignore you when you're flashing. A lot of people complain about the fact that when you're boosting in Generations as opposed to in Unleashed, normally boosting attracts rings to you, but in Unleashed, it did a much better job of that to the point where, like earlier I said that you always had boost as long as you had one ring. That's not really true, but it might as well be true because the way that Unleashed attracts rings to you when you're boosting is so good, there's so much range for it, that as long as you have rings near you, you're going to get them, and so you're going to have boost all the time. But in Generations, they kind of nerfed the boost a little. I don't think that it's bad enough that it ruins the game. Maybe it's just because I came from Unleashed Wii to this, and I never really played HD Unleashed. But I think that the Generations boost meter is pretty good. Like, I think that the way they handled it is still pretty good. Like, it's disappointing that they nerfed it, but at least it's not like Colors nerfed, where you need to get Wisps to boost, but there's not always White Wisp there, so that's kind of disappointing. They also kind of changed the way that you drift in this game. I think that the way you should drift is don't turn too sharply, like don't drift as long as you possibly can. Even though drifting does give you more boost energy for some reason. Instead, you should probably drift like you do in Sonic Drift, where you drift, and then you drift again, then you drift again. Because otherwise you might turn a little bit too sharply or something. I don't know, sometimes the drift works really well and sometimes it doesn't. You should try drifting left and right, like not just drifting one direction. And I kind of prefer the way that they did it in Unleashed, where it was just one button. Like, I feel like it was easier or something. But yeah, Eggman gets kidnapped by the Time Eater after you never actually see his model. I wonder what that means. And now for a completely pointless cutscene. Did this really need to exist? Seriously? And Classic Tales just shows up out of nowhere. Like, it really goes to show you how much they cut content for the story.
Me too.
I would prefer if they cut content for the story rather than the gameplay. But still, this is supposed to be a big anniversary title. A huge celebration and love letter to Sonic. And they got Pontac and Graf to write it. Like, that's like having a wedding and having the person who organizes it be the random guy next door. It's like Pontac and Graf aren't really loving of the Sonic series. Like, you could have got Ian Flynn to write this story. You could have gotten so many more references. And like, references that worked in universe, rather than references that no one would really get if they weren't familiar with the source material, and so they're just empty. Like, don't just quote Sonic Adventure lines, have them make sense in the context. Like, stuff like that. Like, I would have loved it if they had Elise show up just so that they could just have Eggman with a crane yoink around the sky, and just keep doing that over and over. See, that's the kind of reference that this game lacks. A lot of people were expecting the writers to do that, but again, they're not Sonic fans. How would they even know about this stuff so they could make fun of it in the first place? But yeah, you get Chaos Emeralds from boss fights as well as from beating rivals like Metal Sonic. I'm glad that the plot just hands it to you because beating special stages has always been kind of annoying.